I'm a game developer and I'm here to talk about the day before. Not about how scammy it was and how it deceived people with their fake trailers and void announcements, because that's pretty much covered in other videos, but how real teams have real struggles in the games industry and why we should stop believing in every hype we see in front of us. Just from last year to today, we saw a couple of very big games struggle with their launch and try to turn the negative opinions around. First, we had Cyberpunk 2077. It was incredibly buggy and under-delivered on the almost 10-year hype CD Projekt Red created. It went from being one of the most expected games of all time to an internet meme, and now back again to being a solid game because of the Phantom Liberty DLC and most recent patches. And most recently, we had Starfield from Bethesda, another one of the most acclaimed studios in the world. And at the time of this video, it still got mixed reviews on Steam and probably other platforms too. The criticism is also that the game under-delivered on its promise and that you get indeed huge amounts of planets to explore, but they are mostly empty, repetitive, and boring. Of course, there's no comparison between those games and the day before. Both Bethesda and CD Projekt are very real companies that deliver some of the best games of all time, like The Witcher 3 and Skyrim. While the team at Fantastic, the developers behind the day before, are apparently not much of a real team, or at least they try to pretend to be much more competent than what they could actually deliver. However, the fact that the day before got so much hype and that they could sustain the false announcements for so long without real gameplay, I think it indicates a deep problem with expectations that we have as players. Not only that, but it shows how little people understand about game development, how it works, and what is actually doable or not. I mean, you can have all the money in the world. That still doesn't guarantee a great or even a good game. The more things, the more features you want to add to the game, the harder it is to complete it. I mean, it's exponential. For a AAA game, the standard is that you have to invent new technology all the time. You don't simply open Unreal or Unity and stick to the tools they provide. You have to create the tools yourself, and that is incredibly hard. All the time I see game announcements talking about a crazy number of features. Like the day before did. Oh, you can not only do whatever you want in the game and shoot zombies and survive this incredibly harsh world, but you can also have ordinary jobs. Like you can be a musician, you can work out at the gym, you can do whatever you want with the game. And that is funny. I mean, I understand the appeal, but you don't go to the movies and get upset because there are no dumbbells for you to lift, or that you cannot get a massage during the film. No one says, oh, I want this movie to be a horror and a drama and science fiction, but also a Christmas love story. We would say that this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It wants to be all over the place, but it does nothing actually right. You don't go to a soccer match and complain that the players don't do their laundry in the middle of the game, or that the ball is round, but it could be a square, could be a triangle, could be any shape that you want. But when it comes to video games, it sounds like the expectations are just that. When the day before or any other game announces that you can do whatever you want, turn your character into anything you want, you can kill whoever you want in the game, do everything, and you believe that, that's a lie. That's simply not true. You can't do everything. Game design is born out of trade-offs and compromises. No one can do everything with a single game, because that would be incredibly stressful and that game would be called reality. In our reality, we can do whatever we want, but we face the consequences for that. If a game provides you with infinite possibilities but no consequences, that's not fun at all. And if it does provide you with all of the consequences for your acts, that would be incredibly overwhelming for players. But it does so well for the marketing, doesn't it? To release a trailer and state that you can conquer the world in any shape or form, that you can create infinite personal stories all over the place. That's bullshit. A game goes through every kind of compromise just like any other game. If you have an infinite number of quests to perform and they are procedural, don't expect them to be the most immersive personal stories in the world. They're gonna be kind of blunt, kind of straightforward. I mean, artificial intelligence maybe can do that in a couple of years and it's gonna be revolutionary. But right now, there's a clear limit on what developers can accomplish with a game. The problem is that those crazy expectations drive marketing, and marketing drives development. So Bethesda cannot go to the public and say that the game is going to be full of worlds to explore, but the quests are going to be lacking and you have to fill in the gaps with your own imagination. That doesn't drive sales at all, right? But it is the truth. You see the problem. The truth doesn't drive sales. So companies have to say all kinds of things, even though they cannot accomplish that, just because of the expectations. And it's not because the companies don't want to do those things, but they are just not possible. That's not how game development works. So back to the day before, I think that an unproven team claiming that they're going to produce the biggest thing of all time in record time should have been a red flag, a big red flag from the start. But instead, people went crazy, making the game the most wishlisted on Steam, basically rewarding the developers for something that they could never accomplish. And the bigger problem is, it's not just the day before. All games suffer from this kind of expectation madness. Every game has to be the biggest thing of all time, and that is unhealthy, unsustainable, and simply not true. When teams try to do that, what happens most often is that the developers have to crunch their asses off. They deliver rushed features. Many times they quit the industry afterward, but marketing finds a way to smoothen the public image and the cycle continues. I would ask that we as a community stop doing that. The truth is that the publishers are always looking at what the players claim to want, even though they many times cannot deliver that. But by the time players realize the broken promises, they've already created the hype, they have paid for the game, and have made that option viable for the companies. I mean, definitely not for the Fantastic team. They gambled and they lost. But many other teams do just that and they manage to get away with it. And the result is a lot of broken promises and subpar quality games. And that is not what we want. There are a lot of developers creating smaller, incredible games, but they don't get the hype, they don't get the press, they don't get the sales, and many times they go out of business, even though they were creating solid games and they could just not sell it. So it is also our responsibility to request something different, to learn more how game development actually works, so you as a player know what to request, what to expect, and ask from the publishers. Because in the same time that the day before was getting all of the hype, all of the press and wish lists, a lot of incredible games went by unnoticed. Games you have loved to play, but you didn't because the market was so busy with those gigantic things. We are in the era not only of the internet and social media, but also the era of clickbaits. Everything has to be exaggerated to catch your attention, otherwise, it's not a viable business, and we all know how much that sucks. So that is why spreading the word on how game development actually works, I think is so crucial for gamers to understand. I was watching the other day a behind the scenes video for Cyberpunk at CD Projekt Red, and I noticed a lot of comments say, "Oh, I had no idea that the developers had to go through that to make the game." But they did. And I once read that every game being released is kind of a miracle. And that is not much an exaggeration. So much effort and time and money and personal lives go into creating the games that we love. Basically, every single game that we care about. Even if the company might be scammy or the executives might come up with a lot of shit to the team and the public, even then, there's a lot of people putting their hearts and souls into creating the things that we want to play. Games are never released out of coincidence. It's always a lot of work. So I think that this episode with the day before is actually a symptom of something greater that we together, players and developers, need to try and resolve. Not a lot is said in that sense to the general public, but the truth is that AAA development is getting more and more unsustainable. It's crazy to have like 500 people or 1,000 people creating one single game throughout 5 years or more, spending hundreds of $1 million, and everything must be decided in the same weekend at the launch. I mean, come on, we can do better than that. We're copying the film industry instead of learning from it. And also, a film director cannot update their movie based on public feedback, while that is exactly the core and blood of what game production actually is. It's about the players, hearing them out, understanding what makes the game unique and challenging and exciting. Let's normalize that even AAA games don't have to launch with all of the crazy features that they have in mind. That is perfectly normal for games to launch with a small number of very polished features and evolve over time. Games are about that, are about evolving over time. The best classic games of all time, like chess and Go, they evolved over hundreds and hundreds of years. And now we have even more technology and capacity to do that even better. That is already the core of free to play live service games, and I think that's their main advantage. I mean, even though CD Projekt Red did a great job in the end with Cyberpunk and Phantom Liberty, they are done with the game 3 years after release. Now they're just gonna be focusing on their next title. I mean, why? Why not release a more concise version of the game and continuously improve it over the years or even decades, right? A lot of games do that, and they are much better over the long term than they were in the day of their launch. It's like we're underutilizing the very best thing games are made for. Games are a very young medium with barely 50 years in existence, and in the beginning, it was great to take inspiration from other media. Development stages like pre production and post production were actually borrowed from the film industry, and the most used methodology for project management, called Scrum, is from software development. But now I feel games can become more, and for that, we need a more personalized way of approaching game development, leveraging the fact that games become better over the years, not with a single launch. This mindset of a perfect launch completely negates the most crucial part of game development, that is player feedback. And how will you leverage player feedback if you consider that the game is done and done before putting in the hands of real players? If you think about that, it makes no sense. Well, I hope this video brought you some new perspectives and ideas. It was definitely a very good experience for me to write it and shoot it. I think it is so important for us to talk about the real issues that we have in the games industry, and they affect all of us, developers and players. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and I see you next time.